still like surprises.
Yeah.
I still like being surprised after I'm judgy.
You're open
I'm open.
for
and
people to have a different story than your judgment.
Absolutely. And I like it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't wallowing in the judgment. It wasn't like I was a mean guy or anything
Right.
like that. It just, that's what was,
Right.
label.
Mm-hmm.
Label.
Yeah.
And so I love it when the label is not accurate because it's just another gift from the universe.
Nice.
My inner knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
Well, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we get deep into conversation about adventure and creativity, that's our theme for the month of July. We'll be hitting a lot of different topics. Different areas in that topic. I thought it would be good if we just took a moment to get grounded. We both came from full days at work and just life happening. So what do you need to do to get grounded?
I'm carrying anxiety in the chest. So just, get my feet on the ground and settle into our joint energy, which is always helpful, which is take a breath and let all that shit go.
Yeah.
And then just, enjoy you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah. So got a lot of tension in the shoulders. So I need to kind of focus on that. Just, the little teeny muscles, just allowing them to release. That's kind of what I do. Close my eyes. You ready?
You feeling better?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay. So last week you went on a hike.
Another adventure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've heard bits and pieces of the story, but I don't know that I've heard a sharing of the story. It's been busy since we got back.
Yeah.
So tell us about your adventure. What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about life? What did you learn about others? What did you learn about what you need? Did you ask for something that was difficult to ask for? Things like that.
Well, that's a lot.
Whatever you want, babe. Whatever you want.
It's important for me since I passed on other opportunities over 30 years to do what I really like to do the best, which is be out in nature. It is fulfilling to me.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard, because the hiking thing is hard, but it's also a challenge, which I like. I get to see things I've never seen, have conversations that I've never had. And there's plenty of time and like I said before, sometimes the physical exertion opens things up inside of you. That's a whole range of emotions and thoughts if you live a contemplated life or try to, at least periodically, which is what I do, right? In and out of presence, more and more in, to look for the meaning in those experiences, right?
Yeah.
So we've already done the episode Water Wolves and a Stardust Telephone from last September when I went on the Lake Superior hiking trail and just did 60 miles solo with just a tent,
right?
And packed in my own food, etc.
Right.
In 6 days. So it was really, really difficult, and there was a lot to it this time. I was interested. My brother-in-law, who is 6 years older than me, and who has known me since I was 10,
Yay.
married to my oldest sister. And I just adore him, look up to him. He taught me a lot about responsibility, doing things around the house just because they need to be done, with no expectation of recognition or reward, just taking care of things. He's a lot more disciplined than I am physically, but probably in most things. He's there's just a lot of things to admire about him. And so he and I had never in all those years done something just the two of us. And I know he likes to hike. He's done tons of world traveling. He's never gone solo backpacking. So I think he admired that about me. But I didn't know how he'd react. So I reached out and said, hey, how would you like to do a backpack trip? And he was like, oh my God, the way he responded was great.
Oh.
Yeah. So he was thrilled. He took it on himself to get it all planned, what we would do. And we both decided, hey, because he said, I've always dreamed about doing Yosemite, which is a massive hike. It can be depending on what your choices are, but the elevation changes would be, it's the Rocky Mountains are way different than the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is where we ended up going. Doesn't mean this wasn't challenging, but I thought it was wise. And he suggested, hey, how about instead of just, backpacking, carrying all of our own stuff, why don't we get a guide? We won't go the expensive route, but he'll keep us out of trouble and it'll give us a chance to see what we like. So that's what we did. We went to Asheville, North Carolina, which, as you know, suffered the crazy floods from the hurricane that came through last year. The main part of the city downtown was still intact. It was like there was an arts district, I guess, down in the bottoms, the river bottoms. And the rivers got to I don't know, multiple times their normal size. And covered a mile in width, came out of their banks by a mile. It was crazy. So there were landslides in different areas of the mountains just because they'd already had weeks of rain, and then in came the hurricane. But in any event, that's where we were. But it wasn't just destruction where we went.
Gotcha.
There was one section where the winds had blown down all the trees, but that was it.
Wow.
So we're in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which are really cool. So that part of the adventure is, you see those vistas with the multiple ranges off into the distance of more soft-topped mountains than the Rockies. It does not mean they're not steep. Because they are. As I found out. So this was different than the solo backpacking trip in that we had the guide. He, checked with us the night before, made sure we had the right gear, kind of gave us the lay of, showed us the map, all this stuff. And they took us to a base camp. We hiked in. He said it was 5 miles. Brent had a fitness watch on and it was more like 7.5 or 8 just because of the elevation changes by steps, So in any event, we set up camp, set up our tents, minimal stuff. And then, he cooked dinner, but the dinner was just round pasta with sausage cut up and cooked in a pan, really simple with some pesto thrown on top of that, So I'm just saying it wasn't bougie. Like we're having filet mignon at a candlelit, out of Africa tent. But I didn't know, because Brent likes nice things too. But he's also is a Spartan. It's just fascinating, his complexity.
As we are.
So I'm doing a lot of talking. Are you good?
I'm good. I'm good.
So anyway, it was just he and I went, stayed with he and my sister for the afternoon before. and spent the night at their house, which was great. We got to spend time together as the three of us, which it always is, or more with my other siblings. But then he and I took off the next day and headed down. Then we spent the night together in a hotel room. And then went on the hike the next day. So it was just tons of time. It was a 5.5 hour drive from their house to Asheville. We got to talk the whole time.
Nice.
Some of it was old times. A lot of it was life experience and different adventures that we had, just sharing, what had been going on. And it was just really nice to hear him talk and share.
Nice.
Yeah. He's said he's a Spartan. He's tough. He does CrossFit. And so, he's used to box jumping and all that crazy stuff that CrossFit people do. And I've been sitting in a chair for 30 years. However, I've been starting to take a lot better care of myself, as you know. So it was good. And he didn't, he was non-judgmental. I think he was just thrilled that I was still strong enough to go do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we got plans for more hikes.
Yeah. Yay.
And we did our thing, our tents were set up next to each other. It's like, well, if I snore, just, yell at me or whatever. And he's like, you didn't snore at all. And actually he snored just one night.
That's funny.
Yeah. And so, the guide was great. He taught us all about the flora and the fauna, and we'd spot things, and the guide was all excited. Oh my gosh, it's a blue blah, blah, blah snail. And I mean, it's a little teeny little snail, but he could spot those things. It was wild.
Nice.
It's just his brain was attuned to that. And he was, his story's fascinating too.
Yeah,
I told you a little about that.
Share a little. Yeah.
He was a marketing guy. Like, I think he did trucking stuff, but in any event, he is fluent in Spanish and French, and he lived in France working for a trucking conglomerate. Back in like 2008, the market turned and they were having, cutbacks and that sort of stuff. And he's a Midwestern boy from Ohio, but he just decided, I'm done with the regular world.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Whatever his disappointments were, I'm sure there was something that was more triggering than what he you get it. We don't share it all. Not always. Maybe we share more than we should sometimes. I don't know. But in any event, he sold his house. He sold his car.
Yeah.
He sold his belongings.
Yeah.
And he told his family, I'm through hiking the Appalachian Trail. It's 2,600-mile hike. And he went.
Yeah.
And he wasn't in particularly great shape. He ended up losing 45 pounds or something like that. Went from 190 to 145 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And made some of the best friends of his life. And he got to the end of the hike. You hike from, I can't remember the city in Georgia. It's down in Georgia, northeast of Atlanta, where you start. And you hike all the way to Mount Katahdin in Maine.
Wow.
And it takes about 6 months. So I wanted to know, how was it? How'd you do it, et cetera. And he's like, really, it's the mental part is why most people quit. They just can't not day after day after day after day hike 15 to 20 plus miles. Yeah. And he said at first, I could cover 6 miles or whatever. And he said by the end, I could cover 24, 25 miles in a day.
Wow.
And he learned how to set his mind to, and it was interesting. I said, well, when did it become, easier? And he said, well, I was probably 800 miles in or something, about a third of the way. And he said it was pouring down rain and had been for hours. And he said, I came upon this guy, I'm just going. And he said, I came upon this guy. He's got, his what do you call it? The poncho. He has his rain poncho over him, and he's hunched down in these low trees, and he's just like in a squat, just ready to quit, F this stuff. I'm going home.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, buddy, how you doing? And it was just like, oh, this effing rain. And he said, I didn't even realize it was raining until he said that.
Wow.
And he said, I knew then that I was going to make it the whole way.
Wow.
And he said, it's just changing your attitude about what is being thrown at you, which we all know, right? Well, maybe not all know, but maybe we've heard it, but you kind of know it. And then you have to know it again, like so many things, and again and again. And, but it just making a conscious choice, or for him, that was an unconscious choice, but it happened because he had continued to push through. And like so many things, I've talked about a story I read about most people who drown die yards from the shore because they stop.
Right.
So in any event, it was a fascinating story. He got to the end of the trail. He's like, I didn't know what I was going to do when I got to the end. Yeah. He said, when I got to the end, I decided I was going to become a creature of the woods. So he changed his whole life outlook. Yeah. He lives in a van that he modified, so he's got sleeping quarters and cooking facilities and all that stuff. There's not a bathroom or a shower. He does that at, Planet Fitness or YMCA or truck stops, wherever. Sure. And he just decided, I don't care about having lots of money or things, and he talked a lot about the cheapest way to live. And he goes down to a place in Mexico every year where and he's a rock climber too.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sure.
So hikers, rock climbers, he said the only thing was like mountaineers that climb on ice. He said, that's not for me. Gotcha. They're crazy.
That's funny.
Anyway, he was sweet and knowledgeable, and he could name so many plants and animals. It was pretty wild. He was really good with mushrooms, fungus and things, and knew all about how they, reproduced and spread and what they, could, like, he found chaga, chaga chai, is the big deal. And he showed it to us, and we tasted it and all that stuff. And he cooked some mushrooms for us one night. It was chicken of the woods is what it was called.
I've had them.
He's in there cooking, over the campfire. I'm laid down because it was after like a 12-mile hike, and I'm just like, So I go get in my tent, and he's out there making up a chicken of the woods song while he's cooking it. Chicken of the woods.
That's awesome.
It'll fill your tummy. That sort of stuff. It was so funny. I mean, that's adventure. You're experiencing people that are not conventional, not what you're used to, who are unafraid to just say, this is how I am and how I choose to live and how I choose to claim what's important, etc.
Yeah. Who our culture often values as crazy.
Yeah, or hippie, or, we put all these labels on.
Lots of labels.
On each other, right?
Yeah.
I've done it too.
How did Brent find him?
He liked him.
I'm sorry. How did Brent find him?
Oh, it was through a company. He's a guide for a company.
Oh, okay.
So he signed up for like wilderness trekking, or I can't remember. Sorry, I can't remember the name of because Brent made all the arrangements. So I just paid Brent. I didn't pay the company. You'd think since I rode in their van, I'd remember, but I don't.
That's
sorry.
Okay. No, we'll get it from Brent. We'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the notes because they do. I mean, there's all kinds of options, and I thought they did a really nice job. Nice. They outfit you to the degree that you want. If you want to bring all your own gear, you can bring it. If you just want to bring parts like your own sleeping bag, that's okay too. But they provided. I'm not hauling my nice equipment on a plane. because I've got mesh on the back of my nice backpack, et cetera, and I didn't want to get it torn up in baggage, right? So they provided my sleeping bag, which they send always to the dry cleaners afterwards. So everything's clean. The tents were spotless. They offered trekking poles. I took my own of that, which is weird. I packed that in my suitcase. Bizarre. But I wanted my own. So they provided all that. And then he provided, they were simple meals. Like we drove up, it was maybe a 2-hour drive from the hotel to where we parked in a parking lot and then trekked in to this campground. And it's not campground is, there's no
Generous,
running water.
right.
It was in a national forest preserve. And so, it was like
An
flat
opening.
spots in an opening that they've put their tents up in before, right?
Right.
But what was cool about that was it was in this grove of rhododendron. And so these rhododendron are probably 25 feet tall or taller, maybe 30 feet tall. They're huge out in the woods. And it was like this super bloom that he'd never even seen. He said, I've never seen them bloom like this. And so if you looked up from underneath, you could just see the pink flowers above, but it was so powerful. It was like this humming through the woods because the bees and the flies were all getting sustenance from all those flowers, and they've got to do it when it's blooming.
Right.
And then what was cool, you'd come into a clearing or whatever and maybe get a side view, and there was just like whoosh, this whole wall of pink. Sometimes it would be a arch of pink that you were walking through. But what was cool too, especially, was when those fell, then it was a pink carpet.
Wow.
And the mountain laurel was in full bloom, and there were azaleas, and then there were different kinds of rhododendron too, like or azalea, one or the other. They're kind of the same family, but in any event, like a flame rhododendron or flame azalea, and it was this orange. So there was just this natural beauty. And what's cool too, see, adventure. I get excited. Yay.
Yes.
The oak trees, the reason they call it the Blue Ridge Mountains, which are part of the Appalachian Mountain Range, is the oak trees emit this gas, and I can't remember what the name is. I think it's isoprene, but I could be completely wrong. In any event, they emit a gas, and the gas creates this blue tinge across the trees in the distance when you're looking. And so you have all this variation of color. It's a rainforest too. Did you know that?
No.
So it's a rainforest, and so there's typically, you may have rain every day. But comes and goes. Sometimes it socks in for days straight. Luckily, that wasn't this time.
Yeah.
But if it had been, we had raincoats. So anyway, but there's clouds, et cetera. And so there's all this variation in the distance of light coming through the clouds. Some spots are sunny and some spots are dark, with this blue tinge across the whole thing, and multiple ranges. Like the most we could count at some of the biggest spots was like 6 different ranges off into the distance. So you'd have a row of hills and then a row of hills and a row of hills. And I mean, it was just stunning.
Oh.
And we'd come out onto a rock outcrop and maybe take a break there. And there was a woman with us too, which we can talk about that adventure for her.
Oh, sure.
3 dudes and her. That's pretty brave, I think.
Yeah.
But in any event, we'd all pile out onto this rock outcrop, and it was never like a big overhanging. It was just a rock in the hillside. I mean, I wouldn't want to go up to the edge, but it wasn't scary like that. And take the packs off, sit down, and get a little break, and just enjoy the magnificence.
Nice.
Of it.
Nice.
And then the guide, he was such a fascinating guy. He's quoting Teddy Roosevelt. There was some quote, about the patchwork of quilt laid out across the landscape, is the beauty of the Appalachian Mountains. Anyway, it was, I like it when people do unexpected things.
Yes.
Right. And he could name all kinds of books in all kinds of genres that he'd read, and he knew the digits of pi.
Mm.
He said when he was a kid, he could name 52 of the
Wow.
decimal places.
Right. That's what I was assuming.
He said, my mom said, yeah, you're pretty smart. And he's like, Mom,
Yeah.
I'm
Hello.
autistic.
Right. Aw.
Anyway, he was, there was a brilliance to him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I think he listed off 22 or 25 spaces when we were talking about it. He said, I can't do the 52 anymore. He said, maybe, but he just did 22.
That's
Maybe he
awesome.
didn't want to brag. I don't know. So I love the unexpected package, because he was talking plants and animals all the way in, identifying leaves, identifying trees. And then he had the bird song app that actually pop up a picture of the bird. Does yours do that?
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But he was just, fixated on what's that bird? Because he was learning. Right.
Oh.
So anyway, that was great.
Nice.
So let's talk about the woman that was with us.
Yes, please.
She was a real estate, in the real estate business in New York. I don't know if she was multi-property manager or in sales. She was an executive type though, and 30 years old, but lives in Brooklyn. And, we go to the pre-meeting and she's sitting in the, in the hotel lobby area, and we're like, oh, because I thought it was just me and Brent.
Oh, gotcha.
But anyway, there she is, and then the guide, and she didn't even blink at all to be out in the middle of nowhere with 3 dudes that she doesn't know. And it was so funny because she had all brand new gear. She'd gone to REI, and it's like a brand new backpack and like every gadget you could think of.
Yeah.
She even at the last day, we're sitting at this picnic table having just ham sandwiches because it was like simple fare, like I said. And I went to the restroom because we had stopped on the drive down the mountain. We'd stopped at a park, like a park ranger station or whatever. They have those spots for the national parks.
Yeah.
And I'd gone to the restroom. I came back, and she's with her brand new fancy waterproof boots. She has this little brush, and there's water coming out of the brush as she scrubs the mud off the boots.
That's
that kind of thing.
awesome.
And then we got to camp, and she pulls out this, it's like a plastic pink fan, and then she had a white plastic fan. She had 2 fans.
That's awesome.
So unexpected packages, right?
Yeah.
So you see that.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm like, okay.
Oh, judgment, you mean?
She was cool. Yeah. Thinking,
how's she going to make it?
let me be honest, like Barbie is what I was thinking, which is not, I'll just be honest. That's went through my mind, but not in a bad, like, good Lord, I don't want to be with this person, but this ought to be interesting, right? Here is the chubby guy from Missouri making judgment on this woman from New York City.
Right. Yep.
Anyway.
As we do.
And she was a freaking rock star. I mean, that woman was bold. She was kind. She wanted to share her snacks. And not afraid to say, yes, I'll have seconds or thirds. I mean, but she worked it.
Yeah.
She'd be up before the rest of us. She was right on the guide's tail the whole time. I mean, if he was going to walk fast, she was going to keep pace with him. And meanwhile, I'm taking,
It's okay.
and I'm proud of myself. It's okay. I can do it.
Right.
But I'm doing that contrast not to shame myself, but to emphasize the judgment piece, and it wasn't bad. But I was noticing the newness of all that and the gadgets and things and thinking, ooh, this could be wild. And then the guide had to take a restroom break. He's like, you guys go on. So we're going up. This is the hardest part of the hike. We're hiking Cold Mountain.
Okay.
Which is from the movie with Jude Law and Nicole Kidman and all that. So Renee Zellweger, do you remember?
Nope.
Anyway, it's about a group of Confederate soldiers who desert, and they're trying to make their way back home. And then there were groups of bounty hunters, basically, who were trying to catch deserters
Wow.
and turn them in to get paid, and then they'd get hanged.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so it's a pretty intense movie, but in any event, we're in that same location. So you hike. It was 5 miles out. When you get to mile 3.5, the last bit of the 5 miles is 1.5 miles up from the base of Cold Mountain. And it was torture.
Wow.
So the guide takes a break to go to the bathroom, go on, so he could have some privacy as we went up the trail. And she took the lead. And she was like a gazelle. The guide had been holding her back with his speed because he was, I think he was measuring his speed to make sure the group stayed together. But
Sure.
I mean, she was, and it wasn't to prove anything either.
Right.
She was just
going.
like freedom, And she was so sweet, so kind, so gracious and sharing. And all that stuff, and this package of a sophisticated lady,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was really cool. And I'd like to be
Surprised.
shown by the universe that, you still make judgments, Walker. And, we're going to share with you the beauty of humanity, the complexity.
Yeah.
And that sort of experience just gives me great appreciation every time,
Yeah.
So if she happens to listen to this, I hope I didn't hurt her feelings by admitting to my judgment, but it was true. And she was just really cool and unafraid, or at least, she overcame whatever fear she had.
Yeah.
She did tell us on the last day after it was all over that she had mace. Probably some super mace sprayer, double holster.
So, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Just making sure. That's good.
well, yeah. I mean, I think it's important to take responsibility for ourselves.
Yeah.
If you're going to go on an adventure like that, you do need to contemplate, if things were to go south, am I prepared to take care of myself?
Right.
That's part of it too.
Right. In all the ways.
In all the ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but she was like, all sad when we dropped her off at her bed and breakfast back in Asheville. She's like, oh, I'm going to miss you guys. And it was the big pouty lip, she meant it too. So we did well. She liked us, which is great.
Sounds like a great
And
crew.
we liked her too. Yeah. It was nice. And, so just all those experiences of learning about how to hike and what to eat. And I got off track. Let me share this one last thing. So he goes to Mexico every year and does rock climbing and hiking with I guess a bunch of hikers go to this place. And it's outside of a big city, maybe, I don't know, miles away. And so maybe 20 miles or more, it's not, I just want to make sure it's not a suburb of a big city. It's a small town in Mexico. And some family has basically, adopted him. And he doesn't have a lot, So he said, I lived there for 3 months for $1,500. Yeah. And they're like, so goodness sakes, are things just that cheap there? He said, well, you got to learn how to manage. He said, but you get pretty good meals. And he said, and a bunch of hikers go, and he said they always, if they're, they always take more food than they need, and then they leave the food. And he said, so the hotel owner where all the more wealthy hikers stay will put all that food in a bin. And he said, if you're first to the bin, you got all you want. And he said,
Wow.
So that was part of what he does. And he's, it doesn't all have to be perfect and beautiful and fresh. He's like, produce, we throw away so much produce that, just because it's not pristine, it may have, a spot you got to cut off or it's wilted, the leaves on whatever it is are wilted, et cetera. He said, you don't have to, it's still good.
Right.
And it's just like I said, it's a different appreciation for what is adequate to live.
Mm-hmm.
And
What's enough?
What are your priorities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 We overdo often.
I think in the United States, especially, we do. We live a very different life of largesse and abundance than so many places. That's my perception.
Sure.
I haven't been
Not
to a lot of
everyone.
those places.
Not everyone.
Not everyone, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And less and less recently, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
in any event, it's just nice to see those different perspectives and different ways of living.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think there was some judgment on his part.
Sure.
You hear some trial lawyers like,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a little bit of back off.
Sure.
He backed off a little bit because I didn't say that the first night. I like to not get into what do you do is the first question, right?
Right.
But he asked me while we were hiking.
Yeah.
So he backed off a little bit after that, but he came back around.
Yeah.
I was an okay guy. I can do stuff. I think it was when there's this really cool thing called shining rock, and it's like a building-sized vein of quartz that's jutting up out of this hillside before you get to the base camp at Cold Mountain.
Yeah.
Huge, and it's not clear, but it's white,
Mm-hmm.
and it's cool and shiny,
Mm.
and that was great. So we're walking up, and I'm feeling the tingles, and the energy of that whole thing, and there were. Brent's not a woo-woo type of a person. And the guide was like, yeah, you could recharge your crystals here. And so but then he kind of, was acting like he didn't really mean it, but I think he did.
That's funny. Yeah.
So anyway, you have to climb up to get up on top to be able to then go, you walk across it to the edge to see the view of the multiple hills. And it was steep, and it's not a little bit, it's slick compared to other rocks.
Sure.
So we got up there, and then we were coming back down, and he came to a really steep spot, and he said, here's how you climb this. And he said, left foot here, hand on this ledge over here, because there's a big rock here. Put your hand here. There's another foot place in a crack, And then he showed us how to get down. And it was, I don't know, it wasn't way down, but, a good 15 feet or something like that. And so here's his judgment of me.
Mm-hmm.
He goes down, the other two go down, and I'm last. And he's, like kind of getting ready to catch me.
You? Yeah.
Because he thinks I'm going to slide.
Yeah.
And I just mountain goated it just like he did.
Yeah.
And then my foot comes down on this because he's standing, because there's like a dirt edge at the base and then more rocks to go down after that. But I get to the, dirt spot and take that last step, and I look at him like that because I know he didn't think I could do it. And he said, well, I didn't think you could do that. So I got a little bit of respect back, I think, and then I was back in the club. So, yeah. He's thinking, I don't know what he was thinking, but my interpretation is he's thinking lawyer from Midwest, Missouri, doesn't get out much, blah, blah, talks a big game about doing this solo backpack trip, but, he looks a little out of shape to me. Anyway, who knows what he was really thinking, what we make up in our heads.
We make up a lot.
Stories.
Lots of stories.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Your turn. Back to me.
We are going back to you.
Yeah. Okay.
I want you to take a moment.
I got all energized about that.
It's good. It's good.
Because I was droopy.
Yeah, it's good. It was a good experience. This is why we explore and we take adventure, right?
Yeah. Okay.
What do you think was one of the most unexpected things you saw? And what do you think was one of the most beautiful things you saw?
Let me think about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. There's a lot, babe, but I'm going to try. I'll just pick.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay.
The most beautiful thing
Mm-hmm.
I saw was we were coming back after the up Cold Mountain and back down, and my hips were just screaming because I've been, as you know, I've been having hip flexor problems from sitting in a chair for 30 years and maybe some osteoarthritis. But in any event, that was difficult. And because I don't do box jumping at CrossFit like my brother-in-law, coming down, if there was like a 3 foot or more drop in spots, he might just jump it. And so would the others, the gazelle and the guide.
Yeah.
But I would have to spider down.
Yeah.
And so I would get back behind. But in any event, so we're exhausted coming back from that. And we end up on this, on an outcrop. Everybody takes a break. And we're seeing the view that we'd seen on the way in because it was out and back that day. So it was beautiful. I'd seen it. It's so funny how I've seen that. Still beautiful. But in any event, they all get up, and I then had, because I was panting, by the time they're ready to go, I still hadn't gone to the bathroom. So I'm like, hey, go on, I'm going to catch up. And so I stopped to go to the bathroom, and I look over on the other side of this path and realize that there's another path that goes up. And I go up. It was like cloudy on the side we'd been sitting on. And so I walk up that path, and it's not very far, 20 feet maybe. And it's up through these boulders. And I come out across the boulders, and I'm facing the completely opposite direction. And the trees on the other side were obscuring the view, so you couldn't see. So I get up to the top, and it was like the wall of clouds was even with the top of this ridge. And so it's blue sky. There's sunshine on this far side, and it opens up into this huge, different looking valley.
Yeah.
And I could see some, it was a smaller city in in a distant valley going up. And it just, it was like a secret gift just for me. Because the guide hadn't said, hey, go up here and take a look at this view.
Yeah.
And the contrast between the two. And I had thought, I'd almost not done it. I was like, I need to catch up. I don't want to be behind. They're just moving out.
Right.
I should do this. I should do that. Whatever. And whatever. And I just, it dawned on me as like, this may be the only time in your life where you could find out what's at the top of that trail. And then I did it.
Yay.
Yeah. And it was a gift. So, and then surprising was the quartz outcrop.
Nice.
Completely unexpected.
Yeah.
It was beautiful too.
Yeah.
But more than that, different, you're in this area where there's not a lot of obvious rock. And if it is, it's big boulders that are granite. And they're gray. And then you see from a distance this white splash on the hill. He pointed out when we were, 10 miles away.
Wow.
And then when we got to the camp, it was only like 15 minutes from the camp. And then you're there in it.
Wow.
And you're walking. As you get in closer, you still can't see it because there's a rise in front of you.
Sure.
And you start to see white quartz rocks.
Oh,
and I'm like,
okay.
whoa, that's cool. And then
Wow.
there'd be like a pink, like a rose quartz almost. Well, that's cool. I didn't expect that. And then the guide says, look at this one. He said, that's a Cherokee snowman. He was just messing with us, because it was like a big, hunk of quartz out in the middle. And you didn't see all the other until you come over the rise. And then all of a sudden,
wow.
And it was just so unexpected, and how it felt too.
Yeah.
It almost felt wet, even though it wasn't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
So that was a surprise.
Yay.
Yeah.
What do you feel like you learned about yourself on this trip?
I still like surprises.
Yeah.
I still like being surprised after I'm judgy.
You're open.
I'm open.
For people to have a different story than your judgment.
Absolutely. And I like it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't wallowing in the judgment. It wasn't like I was a mean guy or anything like that. It just, that's what was, label. Label.
Yeah.
And so I love it when the label is not accurate, because it's just another gift from the universe.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Because people are lovely.
Yeah. So what did you learn about yourself?
Well, that I still label.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But also that, like you said, I'm still open to hanging in there long enough to be, to learn something different. And I love that piece about my life. What else did I learn? More exposure to different views on what is a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
So I still retain that curiosity, and I like nice things, this. Home is important to me, etc. But I think, as I think about it while we're talking, that the more exposure I have to people with those different types of views, the more prepared I would be if it was all taken away.
Interesting.
We'd all be okay. And not just okay. I think we could thrive. We'd have to learn.
Yeah.
Okay, did that stuff really mean that much to me? Yes, it was convenient. Yes, it was comfortable. All those things. But this guide is happy, fulfilled, doing what he wants to do, not worrying about the worries of the world, of the world, right? He's not watching the nightly news or doom scrolling on his phone. He's learning about plants and animals and reading all kinds of fiction.
Yeah.
So I think it's, it's good to be reminded of that, I think, because who knows?
Yeah.
We just don't know what curves are going to be thrown at us, curveballs. What else that I can still dig deep? And I said this about the last trip. That was hard going up that mountain. I wanted to stop.
Yeah.
And lay down. But I didn't.
Yeah. And you could have and gotten back up again.
And it would have been fine.
Right.
But I chose to push myself on. I would stop and get my heartbeat to regulate, and then I would move on. And I like still being able to make that choice. Yeah. And I think your point is important. I think this is your point, is that if I had chosen, hey, I'm going to rest bigger, that would be okay too, without judging myself as a failure or not good enough, etc. Right. But there were times when I was in the back and I had to work on that.
The judgment of yourself.
The judgment piece, not in good enough shape, should have lived differently for all those years, worked out like your brother-in-law.
Hmm.
Because he's always worked out.
Yeah.
You know.
So comparative.
But it's learning about myself that I still, even though I've done so much work, that still can come up, but also seeing it come up.
Yeah.
I'm much better at, that's what I'm doing to myself. And let's not do that.
Right.
You're doing really great, actually. Look at you go.
Yay.
Yeah. So, there's probably lots of other things I could say I learned too. But anyway, those are big ones.
Thanks for sharing your adventure, babe.
You're welcome. Thanks for supporting me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. There's going to be lots more hikes, as you know.
I do. I do. And I support you going on them.
Well, when we do Yosemite, the plan is for you and Liz to join us once we get back to the hotel for the relaxing part.
It sounds
Still
good.
enjoy the beauty of the mountains, but not with the deprivations of a mountain hike, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good for me.
So what's your next big adventure?
Well, I think what we'll talk about next was our adventure to Europe.
Okay.
Because I think not right now, next episode,
Next one.
just because there was a lot of learning there too, and adventure for us and hiking, different hiking than what you did.
Yeah.
But still lots of learning.
Challenging. We walked 20 some odd thousand steps that day. So we'll get to it.
Yeah. Very different than walking 20,000 steps in the city. Yes.
That was hard too.
But different in the mountains. Yeah.
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 So before we go, we need to mention a couple of things.
Oh, yeah. Sure. So, our parenting series, Conversations We Wish Our Parents Had With Us Growing Up, the introductory video is going to come out in July. And then our plan is to release an episode with the conversation every other week after that. And we don't know how long it's going to go on because the topics continue to expand. And so we were going to limit it, and now we're just going to do an open series. And so, and they won't be long, 10 to 15 minutes, but it'll give people plenty of things to think about.
Yeah.
In a really compact episode. And they'll be set up as a playlist on YouTube, so you can watch them in a row if you would like to. You can binge watch them if you want. Yeah. And just continuing to remind people that if you're listening on YouTube, to do the subscribe and notification. So click twice. It's actually 3 clicks because I think it's like subscribe, notification, and then all. I think it's like it's 3. It's really 3 clicks.
And sometimes there's a little delay between, the two.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's just interesting.
Yeah.
But it's really important.
Yeah.
If people want to, if you don't end up doing the notifications, you may not get notice of when the latest stuff comes out. So
yeah.
Maybe a lot of people know that, but not me.
I know. Or, it's okay. So much to learn.
Yeah.
So much to learn. But anyway, so next time we'll talk about our trip to Europe and the adventure that we had, and one of the creative things we had to do with one of the vehicles that we rented.
You're doing all the talking next time.
I am. Okay.
We need to hear how you experience adventure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I still want, you were there too.
I know. I'll chime in.
Yeah.
I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.